Hello, and welcome to the Hypno Travelers on the Magical Psyche Highway podcast. That's right. Your host and tour guide is Scott Prevet, a healer, hypnotist, and a magician. And your bus driver is Jason Gobelli, also a hypnotist, an entrepreneur, and a spiritual guide. Disclaimer, neither Jason, Scott, or any of our guests here today are licensed professional psychologists or psychiatrists. So please don't make any changes to any medication or treatments that you are currently on based on the conversation that you hear here today. Just hop on the bus and enjoy the ride. Trip with us on the Inner Revelation bus. That's right.
Hello, welcome back to the Hypno Travelers on the Magical Psyche Highway. I'm Jason. We got Scott here, and we got a great guest today, a special guest today. We've been waiting for this guy. We got the wizard of hypnosis. That's right, the great Mike Mandel. Mike, how you doing?
I'm doing spectacularly well. Had a bit of a virus a couple of days ago, but I've completely overcome it. And as 71 approaches in 2 months, I intend to just get fitter and healthier all the time and outlive all of you.
That's right. Awesome. You look great. You sound great. So
thanks,
Mike,
man.
Let's get right to it. Tell us about you and what makes you who you are.
Oh, wow. Well, I'll give you the headline edition. It's been an interesting journey. I fell into hypnosis in 1965, and I was 12, and my father thought I was watching too much television. I was born in England. We came to Canada in 1957. And when I was in Toronto, where I live now, I learned to speak like a Canadian. But when I was home with my family, I speak like this all the time because this is how we spoke up in Northern England. And so at home, I'd be from Manchester, and I'd get back to school, I'd be Canadian. And the crisis was when my friends come and visit my house, who the hell am I? How do I talk? So I remember that being a stress. My dad, when we came to Canada, there were only 2 TV channels in England. I mean, literally, there was BBC and there was ITV. There wasn't even BBC Two or anything then. And it went off the air, at 11 at night or something. And so when we got to Canada, we've got Buffalo, New York across the way. So we get all these amazing American stations. We get Toronto. And I became a TV addict. But apparently it was the commercials that held my attention. I'd come roaring into the room when I heard a commercial and run out again. And my dad thought I was watching too much TV. He said to me, "Look, son, you've got to read more books. I'll get you to buy one. You can have whatever one you want." So we went to a bookstore in Toronto. And it was $2 on this table. It was The Key to Hypnotism by Walter B. Gibson, who was a pretty good magician, too. Bought the book.
Did you see that, Mike?
What happened? Oh, you got it there. Nice. Brilliant. I had a different cover, but that's the one. And so he taught a method in it. I figure I'm going to learn this stuff, and then it'll be just world domination, something I've been seeking ever since, as you know. So I began studying this book, and I figured I'm going to hypnotize someone. Went next door, hypnotized my friend Wayne Gibbs. And I ran into him maybe 12 years ago. I was doing a hypnosis show back when I did them, and he was at the event. I had not seen him since I was 12, and he was about 9. And he was patient zero for me because I couldn't hypnotize his younger brother, Max, but I hypnotized Wayne, created a cataleptic limb. First attempt at hypnosis, it became anesthetic. He had no feeling in it at all. And I stuck a hat pin through the flesh of his fingertip. I mean, right through the flesh, bleeding. And he sat there and looked at it, quite comfortable with the whole thing. His parents were less enthusiastic about it, especially his mother. I was given a cease and desist order, as I recall. And I kept playing with hypnosis, and a lot of the time it just didn't work. I couldn't figure it out, and I kept attempting it. And then I had a breakthrough. I was 18 years old at a friend's place. He had these great parties Friday nights, and I went over to this high-rise, and still not far from where I live now. I'm still in the hood. And this guy, John Cole, had these amazing parties. He had this bunch of people over, and one guy's sitting there playing his guitar, Stairway to Heaven, like 500 times, and it's just on and on and on. And we were afraid to stop him because he might start on House of the Rising Sun, his other song, and who knows where that could take us psychologically. So he sat there and played, and I said, "Oh, maybe I should, I'm into hypnosis, maybe I should hypnotize someone, just to change the tone." And he said, "I want to be hypnotized," and 2 other people said, "I do too." And, "Oh, okay." So we take the guitar off this guy, so we've effectively disarmed him now. And I started a Walter B. Gibson induction with a coin, and everyone opening and closing their eyes, a variation on Braid's methods from the mid-1800s. And But suddenly something new happened, and all three of them went into profound trances really quickly. And my friend John Cole said, well, what happens now? I said, I don't know. It's never worked this well before. He said, well, do something weird. Turn them into something. Now, the Rolling Stones had just played Toronto recently, prior to that. And so I said, the next person who walks through the door of the apartment building will be Mick Jagger. And that's before Mick Jagger began to closely resemble Don Knotts. Take a look. Anyway, so I hypnotize the three. They're hypnotized. I tell them, the next person who walks through the door of the apartment will be Mick Jagger of the Rolling Stones, and you'll respond appropriately, something like that. And we wait, and it's like 11 o'clock. Everybody's already there. Nobody showed up. It's like half an hour passes. I thought, oh, it's too late. It's not going to work. I didn't realize then that there is no amount of time that will undo a properly placed hypnotic suggestion. So maybe 40 minutes after I did this, the door opens, and it's our friend Pat has come in from his evening job, gets to the party late. He walks through the door, and all three of them, it's Mick Jagger! They go crazy. Now, the weird thing is, Pat was from Kingston, Jamaica. And by his own admission, he did not closely resemble Mick Jagger. So three of them all over trying to get autographs and touch them and stuff. Girls trying to kiss him. And so he's wondering what the hell they've been smoking. And I can see that now because recreation cannabis is legal Canada-wide. The stores are everywhere. So I snapped them out of it. And I said, what did you experience? And the response really put me on a fascination with hypnosis, because the one guy said, well, I knew it was Pat, but I heard myself saying it was Mick Jagger. I wondered why I was saying that. So, classic dissociation. The other person says, well, it looked like a Jamaican guy, but I knew it was Mick Jagger in a very elaborate disguise. Okay. The third, the guy who played guitar, he was the best. He said, I don't know what they're talking about. I saw Mick Jagger. He walked through that door. I met him. So I was blown away by this and began studying it, spending more time on it, but I had no one to teach me. So I wound up developing a number of techniques without knowing that they weren't considered mainstream or kosher, but they still worked because I didn't have any limitations imposed upon me. I was constantly testing the model. And as Richard Bandler said so nicely, just pretend there are no limits and you'll run into them sooner or later. But if you pretend there aren't, you'll get a lot further than holding yourself back. And that's kind of an interesting thing. And so, November 1974 was the next change. I was 21 years old, and I had just seen the amazing Kreskin perform live at Minkler Auditorium in Toronto. I was blown away, but I was doing mentalism on my own, and I thought, just for fun, and I thought, yeah, I'm going to deconstruct this. And I was able to figure out how he did pretty well everything in the show. And my friend Steve Warrer, who was a booking agent mostly for musical acts, and I said, I can do that stuff, because he'd take me to the event. And I showed him some stuff. He said, I'm going to bring you into Music Shop International. I want you to demo for the agent. So I came in and did some demonstrations. And, one guy put a deck of cards in the other room. And a woman took a card out of the deck. And I'd written it on the pad in his office. And she told him on the phone what it was. I turned over the pad and said, 4 diamonds. And everybody freaked out. So January the 29th, 1975, 2 months later, I had put an act together. And I flew out to Western Canada, to Edmonton, and was on a talk show there with, are you old enough to remember the old Dick Van Dyke Show?
Yeah, I'm 61.
Okay. It was like 1960. So it was Maury Amsterdam and Rose Marie, who were Buddy and Sally on that show. And John Davidson was on it, and a CIA agent, Philip Agee. And so I did a card effect on this CIA agent. And he gave me a great quote. He said, I would never want to play cards with Mike Mandel. Now that started it. And I came back in triumph and quit my office job at Bell Canada and began doing shows for $100 a show, which to me, I was taking home $90 a week for full-time work then, working for Bell Canada. I mean, $90. I was below the poverty line. But because I lived with my mom and dad still, I was okay. And I had a blast. I mean, they picked me up at the airport in a limousine and with Cap Calloway, the jazz singer. And this is unbelievable. I love this life. So 2 years, proceeded to continue doing the occasional show and then eventually just quit my job outright. And started doing shows mostly in the university and college circuit. I wound up doing close to 5,000 shows because I performed Canada, US, Britain, 5 tours of Australia, and loved doing it. And I continued that for 43 years. And I always say I continued 5 years longer than I should have, because I just got to the point, it was so routine. I was sick of the sound of my own voice on stage. It just wasn't fun anymore. But in 1992, I began to study NLP and got a practitioner's certification. Then went on and did the master prac in John Grinder's New Code. And then went on with my mentor, Derek Balmer, and did the NLP trainer's track with him, which is a 2-year training in New Code. And Derek died in 2000. And just prior to that, he'd taken me on to teach his hypnosis course for him. He said, I want you to be my hypnosis gun for hire, my gunslinger. I said, I'm your guy. So I had so much experience in rapid inductions and stuff on stage, now bringing the NLP in, and I began doing other trainings. I did Larry Nim's Be Set Free Fast in Oakland, and I did, went on to do Mirroring Hands with Richard Hill. I really did a lot of training as I was teaching for Derek. But I found out my real love, and I started doing therapy in 1992, did it for 8 years, specialized in really brief stuff. But my real love was teaching hypnosis. And I find nothing turns my crank like teaching people to replicate excellence. When I hear from our 2,000 to 3,000 students and say, oh, I used this technique you developed last week, and there's a woman in my office and she had a screaming phobia for her entire life, and now she's absolutely free. And I mean, that's just incredible. That's wonderful that someone else is now replicating it and getting these amazing results. So all of that to say, I'm very well trained. I think I do have a natural knack for it, but I'm well trained. And because I was used to being on stage, being in front of an audience to teach was never any kind of consideration. And being a Brit, I have a world-class sense of humor, which cannot be taught. I mean, it's just instinct. Comic genius, as proven by that line itself. And the bottom line is, this is the most exciting time in history to learn hypnosis because it is undergoing the biggest boom since the late 1800s after Lebo and Bernheim, and unfortunately Mesmer in the 1700s, who really contributed nothing of any worth. And right up to Erickson, who I became a Milton Erickson fanatic and devoured his stuff, and Rossi. And, my hypnosis library, I purged it of probably 100 books, sold them off, and I still have so many, it's ridiculous. Here's the jewel in the crown for me of hypnosis. This is a brick from Milton Erickson's house in Phoenix.
Wow, in Phoenix.
It's crazy. That's an interesting thing because years ago, I was teaching in Toronto. We used to teach at University of Toronto. We rented space there, and we had great classrooms. And it added to the prestige of our students immeasurably because it would say on their certificate, the prestigious architecture of hypnosis course, 40 hours of training at the University of Toronto, St. Michael's College. Now, we didn't say we were the University of Toronto. We didn't lie, but it was taught there. And so when somebody would have this in their waiting room and people come in and go, wow, you studied at the University of Toronto. They go, yes, I did. And their prestige goes, whoa. And they say, okay, and sleep now. And the person's gone. So we taught courses there. I was teaching on my own for a little while. Then I connected with Chris Thompson. And Chris saw me at Carleton University when I did a hypnosis show and a seminar. I called it Brain Software, and was teaching some NLP and that to the kids there. And he remembered. And years later, he was living in Toronto. And I think he's originally from Montreal. And he wanted to get back and learn about hypnosis. And he said, I remember that guy, Mike Mandel. And he Googled it and found out I was teaching for Derek Balmer at the time. Chris and I became friends. He was actually one of my jiu-jitsu students. He's one of my black belts. And I'm the system head, weirdly. But anyway, Chris and I became friends. And he said, I want to work with you. And he's a brilliant guy. He's got a mechanical engineering degree from Carleton University. He's an MBA. He was a stock analyst, worked on Bay Street, which is Toronto's Wall Street. He wrote for the Globe and Mail, Canada's national newspaper. Amazing stuff on tech stocks. Working a really high pressure, high-end job. And he packed it all in to work with me. He said, you and I start a business together. He said, I'm going to put you out there as the guy. You'll be the hypnotic rock star. And he said, I'll be the guy making it all work. And so back then, after Derek died, we were doing trainings, and he and I and his group, and we were struggling to get enough people. And I needed a minimum of 6 people so we could do 3 groups of 2 or 2 groups of 3 for, practice exercises. And often we were waiting until the week before to see if we had enough to do it. I mean, it was pathetic. I was pretty well unknown, other than some spots in Britain and so on where I toured, in Australia. Texas, one of the best places on earth. And anyway, I started working with Chris, and he ran our first training together. And that very first training, we had a guy drive from San Francisco to train with us. and there were 17 in the class. And we were blown away that there was a market for it. People just didn't know what we had to offer. And so Chris did all my courses as well. And we put out the Brain Software podcast. We're recording episode 250 tomorrow, which is basically, Chris is always attempting to get me to give some solid content so people have something to take home. And I'm just seeing it as an outlet for context-free humor because I find it hilarious, which came to actually become an induction. We'll give you an aside here. I started sending weird text messages to friends of mine with no explanation, which makes me laugh beyond belief as they try to figure this out. I sent a text message and it said, "Did you remember to warn Tilly about not going to the Costa Brava?" And people, who's Tilly? What? About not going to the Costa Brava. And we just laughed about this because people would respond like trying to get their heads around it. And so it became an induction. We had a guy come up for our last in Toronto. And I said, "Who wants to go into hypnosis?" This guy comes, I've never met him. He sits in front of me. And I said, "James." And it said with intention twice. I said, "Did you remember to warn Tilly about not going to the Costa Brava?" And he went, "What?" I said, "That's right. Did you remember to warn Tilly about not going to the Costa Brava?" And I watched his eyes do a transformational search. And I said, "Sleep now." And he's, oh, the confusion was sufficient to get the critical faculty out of the way. He went right into trance. And it's funny as hell stuff. So working with Chris, like I said, we've done 250 podcasts now. We do one every 2 weeks. And we're already sold out our Architecture of Hypnosis class for May in Toronto. We got an amazing new location at the Pan Pacific Hotel with all kinds of food and stop around. It's a beautiful hotel. And our students come from all over the world. This one we have, for the first time, someone coming from Hungary. We have 2 from Norway. We have 1 from Poland and 1 from Hong Kong. But we've had many from Australia, New Zealand, 1 from mainland China. It just Czech Republic. It's just been wonderful because it all started with Chris seeing the potential here and turning me from a reasonably popular stage hypnotist in Southern Ontario to suddenly this guy who people are coming from around the world to train with. We trained 6 psychiatrists. It's been remarkable. But what's made it wonderful, like I said, is that people take the hypnotic storm home. I say there's a hypnotic storm raging worldwide. It's blowing away poor technique, antiquated trainings, ridiculous methodologies, and we teach people to ride the hypnotic storm with us. It seemed to work. And it all started stupidly because I played blues ukulele, among other things. And one podcast, I started singing Riders on the Storm. Death and storm. It just came from that. So our students became hypnotic storm riders. And the training came out of, I had been studying architecture, Gothic cathedral architecture, which is a fascination of mine, and did a university level course in it. And I woke up one morning and suddenly saw a hypnosis training, a 5-day training based on the structure of a Gothic cathedral that made absolute sense as to how to get the information into people's minds, from the foundation to the bays and the arches and the vaulted ceiling, and then the magic, the stained glass. And so that's what happened. And we're now open for the November training. We do 2 a year. But like I said, I'm going to be 71 in 2 months. And although I can still neck crank and bag grip with the best of them in the jiu-jitsu class, the trainings are the most fun. And the online stuff is fun, but there's nothing like having them come to Toronto and train with us. And then if they do our master training, which is the same training, I do John Grinder's method. They do the training again, at least 6 months later, but at a higher level of expectation. And I work with them privately, and they have covert outcomes that the group doesn't know about. And so they're working with the group without their knowledge. And what I always do is tell the group that these guys are going to be doing covert stuff on them to make it even harder. So now they're anticipating it. So raise the bar, and give them some wizard tools to use in the class, give them some idiomotor skills and pendulums and things. And it's been such a wonderful thing because, guys, what happens is students start to want to come back after they had the master's designation in hypnosis. And so if they've got the master's designation, they can come back forever for free. And we have provided there is a resource to help the others. And we have so many people come back. There's a young woman, Catherine, who's just a lovely, lovely person. She's a musician, a singer. She's been in all these incredible musicals. She's been in Cats, and now she's in Jersey Boys, and she lives in the Isle of Man in the Irish Sea, which is one of the 6 Celtic nations. And she's coming back for the 4th time in 2 years to the class of Toronto, yet again, at her own expense, to train with us again. So it's been lovely. We attract some of the best people in the world, and I get excited about it because, and with this, I'll let you take the helm. I know I've gone on a bit of a Ken Sweatman story here, but the background is this. The first time we went to Hypnothoughts Live in Las Vegas, which we love. I think it's the best, most inclusive, most fantastic hypnosis event in the world. Get 1,000 hypnotists of all stripes who all get along, and everybody's different and everybody's friends. The first time I went, I had so much freaking attitude because I thought nobody knew anything about hypnosis training but me. But to be fair to myself, it was based on having seen a lot of ridiculous stuff that was, I watched someone do an induction that was 40 minutes long, and it just, like agonizing to watch. And this was a trainer. So Chris talked me into going. He said, it's a good idea. Okay. So we went and we met some of the coolest, most amazing people and the best trainers in the world. David Snyder, James Tripp, Freddie and Anthony Jacquin, Melissa Tears. I mean, these people are all our personal friends now. And Jason Lynette, and it goes on, and Carl Smith. And we fall in love with these trainers, and we go to their stuff too. And they come to our stuff. And, the boom was in the 1880s. This is the biggest one in history. And hypnosis is really coming into its own now. And I think it's an exciting time to be a hypnotist.
Nice. Well, Mike, you truly are the wizard. You got all kinds of things going on. You got the gothic stuff going on. You got the rock and roll stuff going on. And that mind of yours is all over the place. I see it. AC/DC.
Here's the Jimmy Page one.
Oh, there it is. Led Zeppelin. So
there you go.
Here's my question, Mike. Now that we're delving into your mind on your magical psychic highway, what in the hell inspired you to put that needle through that kid's hand when it was your first time?
I don't know. A momentary lapse of sanity or something. I don't know what I would have done if he'd screamed and run into the house.
So we see a lot of people who are professional hypnotists, and they still come back to train from you. So how does it feel to be the trainer of trainers?
It's a great blessing. I have a wonderful wife. I've been married to the same woman since 1981. And I jokingly always say, I introduce her as my first wife to people or my current wife. And she is acting under instructions that if I ever make the mistake of believing my own hype, to put a 357 Magnum to my head and pull the trigger. And she goes, don't worry, I will. But it is a blessing because one of the things, you're onto something here though, Jason. We do have trainers come in. And like I said, multiple psychiatrists have come and trained with us, and neuroscientists, and even a neurosurgeon. And it's been wonderful because I do have a faculty for seeing the flaws in people's techniques. So even trainers have often developed poor techniques over time. And I like to teach people to fix the holes in their technique, plug the holes in it, make something that's good even better. A number of years ago, I was asked to do a demonstration for the National Guild of Hypnotists in Toronto. I was a member back then. There was a Toronto chapter. And they said, can you come in and do a guest training? I said, sure. They said, what do you want to teach on? I said, whatever you want. They said, well, like what? I said, whatever you want. Like I'm a generalist. I mean, I honestly am. I will tell you, I'm absolutely crap at just about everything else in life. If I put in if I try to put a screw in a wall, I'll take my head off with the screwdriver. I have no mechanical skill. My dad was an engineer, and he, wished I could have been one, but most things I can't do. I can't stand up on skates, which for a naturalized Canadian is almost, a capital offense. Can't stand up on skis. I'm a shitty swimmer, more than 100 feet, I'll probably drown. But I got the hypnosis stuff pretty well nailed. And so I wound up teaching on rapid inductions for them, gave them a bunch of rapid inductions. But afterwards, this one man said to me, very nice man, Andrew, and he said, can I have an hour of your time? I said, sure. I said, I'm rather busy at the moment. He said, well, how about I take you out for lunch for an hour and pick your brains? I said, sure, I don't mind. I'm as vulnerable to a good lunch as anyone else. And we went to this Chinese buffet, which was phenomenal. And he said, how did he word it? He said, oh yeah, he said, what depth scale do you use? I said, what are you talking about? He said, well, do you use Davis-Hudson or Friedlander-Sarbin or the, Lacron-Bordeaux scale or the Harvard scale of standard hypnosis? I said, don't use any of them. He said, why not? I said, you play chess, right, Andrew? And he said, yeah. I said, is it better to play on a marble board or a wooden one? He said, it doesn't matter. I said, it's the same with scales. Scales are an attempt to digitize what is essentially analog phenomena. You can't put digits to it. You can't say you're at level 4 out of 50 now, because human beings aren't like that. We're not digital beings, we're analog beings. We do things to different degrees. Something that's supposed to happen on level 15 happens on level 1 for somebody else. I said, what we do instead is calibrate, and be able to calibrate when our subject is in a deep enough trance to proceed. And we do that by entering a psychodynamic loop with them, and that's what makes all the difference. And so he said, well, what's your favorite induction? I said, I don't have a favorite. He said, well, which one do you do best? I said, I don't do any of them best. I do them all correctly. That's what I teach people. Do them all correctly. And it's not a, honest to God, it's not a bragging thing. I'm honestly useless at so many things. But I have lived, eaten, and breathed hypnosis 24 hours a day since 1975. You do anything long enough, you get good at it. Just you get way beyond the 10,000 hours. So I'm celebrating 49 years of doing this full time last month. I'm in the 50th year now. And that's a marvel, because my parents died young. My dad died at 57 of his first sign of heart disease was a fatal heart attack. My mom died at 53 of cancer. And my wife's parents died young. And we figured we were going to die young too. So we never made any plans for the future. Yeah, we're going to die young. Let's just live. And then when we passed our parents' expiry dates and began to realize we might be handling this insufficient. We should make some plans for the future. And so we did. But yeah, I guess reaching now 70 and coming up to 71, still in good health and feeling great. Erickson continued until he was, I guess, 80, around there. And I want to keep going as long as I can with this. But that Chris Thompson is a slave driver. He just pushes beyond my limit. But he does it so well, I can't complain.
And then we also know that you have a passion not just for hypnosis, but for music.
Oh, I do. I really do. Yeah.
And just recently, you're going to take this music turn. We know you're a rock and roller. We know you like the blues, and you're studying music this year and everything. It's the year of music.
Yeah.
So my question for you is there emergence with hypnosis and music in your future?
Yes, and it's an unusual one. I played blues guitar since I was 17 and took lessons with a friend of mine who was a teacher when he was 16. He was so good at guitar, still is. And I wanted to play blues, and I play electric blues. I've got the equipment now that I couldn't afford when I was a kid, which is great. And I also got a blues ukulele, handmade by National Steel in the US. And it looks like a resonator guitar you play with a slide. But we didn't want to stop there. My wife said, I think you should play banjo. Okay. So I looked into it, decided to play Earl Scruggs style 5-string banjo. So I've started lessons in that. I'm 13 lessons deep right now, gradually getting the patterns. It's quite different than guitar. And so we bought a piano the same week. We bought a Yamaha piano. That's amazing. Had to move a fireplace out to get it in. And I thought, well, I need an acoustic guitar too. So I bought a Martin acoustic guitar the same week.
Oh, nice.
So Martin, 00017, it's called Black Smoke. It's beautiful, and it's light as a feather. But I never knew how to read music. I read tablature. And so we're both taking piano lessons with the Royal Conservatory of Music right now, while I'm taking banjo lessons. But my wife is taking voice lessons and piano lessons, and also flute lessons. She played flute in high school. She won the Junior Senior Music Awards. And so we just branched into this. And we watched this documentary on country music, the Ken Burns documentary, 16 hours. And I found this missing piece of the pie. I didn't know anything about country music. I liked some Johnny Cash things, didn't really know anything. We became country music fanatics. I've not listened to any metal or rock since then, and that's about a month and a half ago.
Wow.
Just that we've obsessed with it. I've got a 7-hour playlist on my iPad. But the music tie-in in this circumlocutory answer is this. The reason why is in NLP terms, if we have the representational system, so you have visual, auditory, and kinesthetic, with olfactory and gustatory being the subgroups under kinesthetic, 60% of people in Western society are primarily visual. So if you ask them a question, they will default to the visual system. So it's, what was your vacation like? Oh, you should have seen the room we had. And they'll talk in seeing terms right away. Then kinesthetic is smaller, the feeling, but but I'm in the third group. I'm a profound auditory accessor. The auditory system is so powerful with me that I have synesthesia. I've had it my whole life. And I didn't know that other people couldn't see music until I was about 11 or 12. And as a boy, my parents knew nothing about music, but they thought it was important. Blue collar Brits, had no training in anything, but they thought it was important that I was exposed to music at an early age. And so they played classical music and musicals and big band stuff on our record player at home. And I can remember saying to someone, oh, this music, I love this. I love the way it looks, and everyone just gave me this blank expression. What do you mean looks? And I went, okay, I've misstepped here. So when I listen to something like J.S. Bach, I can turn it down in my head, but the patterns are there. I mean, the patterns are just consistent. A friend of mine is Stephen Macchio. He wrote Wrecking Ball for Miley Cyrus, and he's a Canadian pianist. He wrote the Winter Olympics theme. He's just an amazing composer. I recommend his music. And he has synesthesia too, only with him it's colors. He sees colors and I see shapes. And the way it ties in is this. We had a number of my students said, is it possible to give this to someone else? And I thought, well, I don't know. Like, can we connect the parietal temporal lobe to the sight center, to the occiput in the brain so that they can actually see what I see? And so we did an experiment when we were at U of T, University of Toronto, young woman, Andrea, and this is actually online. You can Google it, look in YouTube. And yeah, Andrea hypnotized her and created synesthesia. And we've had people burst into tears watching it when she first sees music, just her response. It's like a deaf person hearing for the first time. And just her face when she sees music. I used the music of Philip Glass for it from the film The Hours because it is a beautiful pattern. And I don't know the limits of this. I mean, I really don't, but that's how it ties in with me. It's what I hear affects me to such a profound degree. And I should probably lean forward so I'm not screwing your sound up here. But I think that's the tie-in for me. Synesthesia, music. And if you've heard, I don't know if you played Journey to the Castle or Sidonia, my two experiments. Well, tomorrow we're recording Rendlesham, which is the third in this series of 7. And this is a much more profound one than the other two, and it draws heavily from the imagery. There's a massive overlap with the 3, and this one is designed specifically to induce health and well-being with people who aren't well and help them get their health back. And so we're going to see how that flies. So it's a great world, isn't it? It's just so full of potential and fun, and if it ain't fun, it's not worth doing.
So maybe you could write hypnotic melodies with maybe some embedded commands in it and maybe metaphor.
What an idea. Yeah, that's a great thought, isn't it? Yep.
We had a guy on here that he infuses his flute music with Reiki. He draws Reiki symbols on the top of his mouth with his tongue while he's playing the music. And very interesting technique.
Talk about not seeing any limits. I mean, that's just incredible. Just incredible.
But what about you, Mike? So are you planning on doing something like this with the infusion of music and hypnosis?
No immediate plans. I'm just having so much fun playing it. Just having a blast with it. But to me, it's the auditory digital. It's the words and the use of words to create these states and to change states. People are always surprised when they learn how easy hypnosis actually is. And it was Bandler who said, in order to hypnotize most people, you have to bring them out of the trance they're already in first. It seems to be the case. It's way easier. And if people still hold to this cause and effect model, where I say this and you feel this, or I say this and this happens, instead of the wonderful psychodynamic loop of ebb and flow between 2 or more people, it makes it all easy. It makes it all much, much simpler and way less effort. My mentor, Derek Balmer, used to always smack us in the side of the head. You're working way too hard. It's like, he was something else. He died of pneumonia in 2000. He was younger than I am now. He was older than me then, but he had a real vision for what could be done. He was arranging to model Nelson Mandela, because Nelson Mandela had a knack of bringing agreement to a group, talking to them and getting the stuff out of the way and bringing consensus and agreement. And the stuff Derek had found out was he treated groups of people arguing like kids in a playground. He became like a kid in a playground and found ways they could all play together. And Derek was attempting to get a meeting, not even online then. There was no Skype or Zoom or anything then. But he was attempting to get a meeting 24, 25 years ago with Mandela and learn to model this and then find a way to teach it to bring consensus to people. So interesting, isn't it?
Yes, yes. And it's interesting that you're into country music now, because I heard if you play it backwards, you get your wife back, your job back, and your family back.
That's right, your dog back. Yeah. That's fantastic. Brilliant.
Hey, Mike, I got a big question for you, and I think this is a real important one. For our viewers out there, please share with us your contact information, how to get in touch with you. And we need to put this over the screen.
Absolutely. It's MikeMandelHypnosis.com, and Mandel has one L, Mandel, MikeMandelHypnosis.com. And we've got pretty well all our stuff there, our online academy, when we're doing live events. And I said, I think we have maybe 5 spots left for May, just in case something happens and somebody can't make it. They're coming from a great distance. But we typically keep the group small. Even the master class, we limit it to 7. And that may change at some point, but 7's the best because I can run exercises and cause each one of them to have to be the team leader while the other 6 do the exercise. So yeah, all of our stuff is there. There's a ton of stuff on YouTube. You can find us all over the web. But we never got into the serious side of this. You want to go into the forensic stuff?
Well, I do have another question for you.
Sure.
Yeah, because see, you're the master hypnosis. You're like the master sensei of the hypnotic dojo over here, and so we want to come from him. We have so much respect for you and all that you do, and we thank you for all that you've taught us. But my question for you is, who do you know and have you met that have been high mentors for you that you follow and
Oh yeah, 2 come to mind right away. So Derek Balmer, who I mentioned, because doing the 2-year trainer track with him, we meet once a month, and I was given stuff to do, and we'd watch videos of R.D. Lang and read Gregory Bateson and all the roots of NLP, and he was amazing. But he brought John Grinder to Toronto twice. Well, he did once, and then the organization, when Derek was dead, we brought him a second time. So I got to hang out with John Grinder, the co-founder of NLP, have lunch with him, and just pick his brain. And much of my teaching style, I'd say 80% of it comes from him. Model his teaching style, watched him work, and his absolute congruence, his ability to monitor the entire room as he's talking. And he'll just, in the middle of it, one thing I've adopted from him is calibrating everybody. So you notice in periphery, not even in the foveal vision, but in periphery, somebody might just sort of furrow their brow at some point. And he catches this in his periphery. And I like doing this. It freaks people out. And he just go, Dave, you're wondering about something. And he pointed at the person without looking. It's like he's reading their freaking mind. They go, yeah, well, what about? Phenomenal teacher. Absolute respect for him. And but I honestly, guys, I'm standing on the shoulders of giants. I mean, I really am. I only did one evening with Richard Bandler, but that was great. Larry Nims, founder of Be Set Free Fast, classical psychologist. Richard Hill, who's become a personal friend. He worked with Rossi, and they came up with mirroring hands, and phenomenal. Tad James, great guy, great trainer, no longer with us. His timeline therapy, his way of codifying timeline work, which came out of the original NLP, and turning it into a standalone therapy has been absolutely phenomenal. I have so much respect for these people. And like I said, David Snyder, Dr. David Snyder, personal friend. We both hear a lot of each other in our trainings. I hear him and I think, gosh, he sounds like me. And when I came to Las Vegas the first time, he said, I listened to Mike Mandel, and he said, I hear my words and voice coming out of his mouth. So we have a massive overlap in our Venn diagrams of how we look at things, not that we'd heard each other before. He's a phenomenal trainer. He's somebody I love to go and see because he's congruent. He sends one consistent message, and damn does he know his stuff.
Nice. So you were mentioning a second ago about the serious side of hypnosis. Maybe that convert side. Do you want to share a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah. The whole forensic hypnosis aspect. I think this is one of the advantages I have is I really have done the stage stuff, and the keynotes and the training, but I've done all the police work too. My clients have included Virginia Department of Criminal Justice, New York State Troopers. I lectured at their academy. In fact, I had a tremendous moment of triumph there. I'll tell you about in a second. And then just east of Toronto, there was a whole region, Durham region, and their police service was extremely forward thinking. They brought me in on numerous cases. So I was consulted on 3 murder cases, sex offense, armed robberies, a poisoning. And I'll give you an example of one of how cool this can be. And the reason I got to do these was I was doing hypnosis shows at the Ontario Police College, which is a couple of hours away from Toronto. And all the police in Ontario, regardless of the city or the town, village, have to go through there to get their basic training. And I did shows there, I think over 100 times. They loved it. And police are very good subjects because they just are used to paying attention and listening and doing what they're told. So then they had an opportunity for me to teach a course. I taught their advanced interviewing techniques course and did a number of things for them. And so when so many police had heard of me, so when the whole idea of forensic work came up, I was the first person they came to. I was their go-to because Mike Mandel's the guy who entertains the cops. So I got asked to work on a number of cases. And one of my favorites is this. North of Toronto, there's York Regional Police. And I had a call from them a number of years ago now. But it's just such a perfect case of how hypnosis can work without creating false memory syndrome, which of course is the problem with forensic work. As soon as we begin interviewing, the person will go into a trance state looking for answers and we'll start to fantasize things. So let's pre-frame it with this. I'd spoken to the RCMP, Canada's federal police. They're like our FBI. They don't ride around on horses. I mean, they're police. And I did a lecture for them in Regina. One of the very few civilians asked to lecture them. And I was talking about interviewing. And I said, I want to just get somebody I've never spoken to. They had a cop, he was about 26 years old, came up to the front, strapping young lad, sat down. And I said, let's just do an experiment here. He said, okay. I said, you ever go on vacation to any kind of cottage or campground? He said, yeah. I said, I'm from Winnipeg. We used to go on vacation a lot to this, beautiful forest area an hour north. We had a cabin there. I said, oh, that's nice. Tell me about it. So he did. And I'm nodding as he nods. And I'm starting to build a rapport loop with him and offering back his language. So he'd say, yeah, it was usually in the summer. And I'd say, oh, summer. So I'm offering his language. We're increasing the psychodynamic loop. Now, there's no induction. That's the thing to remember here. And so I said, just close your eyes for a minute and stretch out in that chair like it's a lawn chair. So he does. And I said, think back to the barbecues you had and the fun you had. And he's nodding. And I said, and how dark it used to get at night. And he's nodding. And I said, you notice how many stars there were? And he went, oh, yeah. I said, the air was so clear. There were millions and millions of stars. I said, did you notice some of them were a different magnitude than others, different brightness? Now, notice I'm talking past tense. Listen to the temporal shift and what happens when I switch to present tense. So he said, yeah, some were really bright. And I said, was one brighter than all the others? And his eyes are closing. Yeah, come to think of it, one was very bright one night. I said, was it moving? Pause. And he said, yes, it moved down. It was going over the trees. It was going over the trees. And I switched to present tense. Is it a star or is it something else? He said, it's a UFO. He said, it was a flying disc. It landed in the forest. I'd totally forgotten this. Now, no induction. This guy will literally pass a polygraph that he saw a flying disc land in the forest because a lie detector does not detect truth and lies. It detects difference. And so he's congruent about it. So based on that, I developed a method of forensic work that could not cause paramnesia. So back now to York Regional Police. They had a case where a woman working at a women's shelter, a tough little lady, she had 2 beds there for battered and abused women. And she would counsel them and so on. And they could stay there to get away from their abusers. Well, one night, there was no one staying there. She left the office at 11 p.m. She came out to the alleyway, which is, a driveway between the buildings. And I'm going to call her Louise, only because that was her actual name. And she told me I can't use it. So she came out of the building. And what she didn't know was she was being stalked by a lunatic sex offender. And she came out to her car. He jumps up from behind it. This guy, she's a little woman. He is in drag, dressed to look like her. He's got a dress in the identical fabric she is wearing that day. He's got a wig on in her hairstyle. He's got makeup on. So this guy's been stalking her and, monitoring her for a very long time. She freaks out. This guy attacks her, tries to rape her. She does what I tell people because I was a police trainer. I said, you fight back immediately. as hard as you can, blind him, kill him, because if you are taken to a secondary crime scene, your chance of survival is almost non-existent. That's the danger. People think, well, I'll wait for a perfect time. No, go crazy right away. Use your adrenaline to get away from the guy. So she fights back. He takes off. She's unmolested, which is great. She's pissed off and wants to get this guy. So she calls the police, and they take her in, and they put it through the computer, and they have 16 photographs spew out of their software. I think it's called the radar program or something, of guys who fit this kind of pattern. And typically they're within 20 to 30 miles, because to stalk the person, you have to be very close. 16 guys who are either out on parole, or have served their time, or have escaped somehow, are possibly in this area. She looks at the 16 mugshots, says, I have no idea. It was dark. He said, but you were there. What did you see? Take a look again. She said, it doesn't matter how many times I look. He was wearing a wig. He had makeup on. I don't know what he looked like. Okay. They hit a dead end. So 6 weeks later, they called me and said, are you willing to work forensically doing hypnosis with this woman? Because she's open to see if she can recall. I said, sure. So we meet the following week. It is now 6 weeks after the event, after the crime. So where does she want to meet? At the women's shelter, where she feels safe. So we go there. It's me. It's a police videographer. It's a policewoman who we have present there the whole time just to make sure everything's kosher. And we have the man who's going to do the interview. And so he's sitting next to her. And I start doing this induction. I'm doing an Ericksonian verbal induction. She starts plummeting down into a deep trance. Weirdly, this cop, who has never been hypnotized in his life to his knowledge, he goes into hypnosis too. The guy who's supposed to be interviewing her, he's got the Tad James drool factor. You can tell the depth of the trance by the amount of saliva on his shirt, right? So, I mean, I'm exaggerating about the drool, but he's gone. So the police videographer had the sense to move the camera and take that guy out of frame. So if you see the video, she's sitting there in hypnosis with a big empty space beside her. And the thought would be, well, why didn't they center her in the frame? Well, that's why, to keep him out of it. So here's the entire method. Let's say you're walking along a beach. It's just guided imagery. You're walking along a beach. It's a beautiful day. And you can hear the sound of the waves. I'm building all the modalities, the sound of the waves, the bright sunlight. It's a calm, lovely day. And you notice something shining in the sand. You pick it up, and it's an old-fashioned skeleton key. And you decide to take it with you. So this is an implication. This is going to open something later without ever saying it. And now the scene changes. You come up on the dunes, and there's a beautiful old house. The house is exactly the same age as you. And it's a friendly, safe house. Now, I'm going to say this so it doesn't sound scary to her at all. It's friendly and it's safe. And it's full of cupboards and drawers. And you can explore it and find everything you need to find. And I let her walk through this house. And when you're ready, I'm not saying anything about the key. It's just implication. And when you're ready, you can come back to this world and this time, bringing everything you've learned with you. It takes her 3 minutes to come out of trance. It takes the detective 9 minutes to come back. I always say, I don't know what the hell he remembered. So good luck. Now, the same 16 pictures. I've never spoken to her about the case before, during, or after the hypnosis. So if I'm forced to give testimony in court, I can honestly say I've not put anything in her mind. So they now show her the same 16 pictures. No kidding, guys. It was this fast. She went, it was him. They went, whoa, slow down. I said, I don't have to. It was him. I said, okay. So they go around to this guy's house to make an arrest. As they pull into the driveway, he comes running out of the house in his pajamas and his house coat, his bathrobe. And he said, thank God you're here. The stress of this has been driving me crazy. I knew you were going to catch me. I need help. I need help. They said, well, we have to read your rights. Read anything you want. Just get me some help. It turns out this guy is producing something like 15 times too much testosterone. He's got all these teenage boys in his testicles. It's like he's just out of control. He undergoes chemical castration at the Clark Institute in Toronto. And I thought the end of the story, but it wasn't. I was telling this story at the seminar for the New York State Troopers in, I think it was Albany. And I see all the skepticism in the room at the end of the, oh yeah, it's too cut and dry. And just then, one of these wonderful things happened. A man stands up and he verified it. This guy said he did the chemical castration in that case. He was a forensic psychiatrist and an Ontario provincial police officer.
Wow.
Wow.
Coincidence? I don't know.
Wow.
The universe.
Great stories. Great stories, Mike. It's been a pleasure interviewing you. Scott, do you have anything you want to ask?
And it's just been a great day going down Mike's Psyche Highway.
Well, it's been a pleasure being here. And yeah, let me know when it's on, and I'll pass it on to our students. And it's been an absolute blast hanging out with you two gentlemen, even virtually.
Oh,
Wow.
we love you, Mike. We love you. And we're so grateful to
Back
have
at
you
you.
here, man. We appreciate you. That said, for our viewers out there, listen, we're glad you're here. We hope you like us. Please comment. If you like us, give us the thumbs up. If you think we're assholes, give us a thumbs down. We don't care. We just want you to respond. We want you to be part, share it with your friends, and we hope to see you next week. Once again, thanks for being here. And Mike, thanks for being on our show and letting us go down your magical psyche highway. And you know what? We can do your ending. So why don't you lead us on out?
All right, let's do it, guys. Let's just say thanks once again, and
Good night.
Good night.
Wow, what a trip. Thanks for taking that journey with us today. Please like us, share us, and enlighten us with your views of the topics we drove into today. We appreciate you and love reading your comments. Thanks again, and we hope to see you back on the bus next week. That's right.